Hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
Welcome back to the Today with Tally podcast, where we add real life value to the lives of everyday people. We were on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Anchor FM, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and About Face Radio. Simply search Today with Tally and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to get every episode and stay up to date with the latest and greatest our guests in this show has to offer. Folks, today's show sponsor is author John Henley. Now, John Henley is a best-selling author who has written over a dozen books that offers a wide variety of genres for you to get lost in. If you enjoy hard-hitting military thrillers, or if you prefer to engage in massive fantasy worlds, or just want to get lost in intense detective mysteries, then look no further than author John Henley. His books are all available online at authorjohnhenley.com. Now, John is a U.S. Navy veteran and a former officer of the CIA. Pick up one of his hard-hitting, hard-pounding thrillers today at authorjohnhenley.com or check him out on Amazon by simply searching author John Henley. Now, folks, we have a very special guest joining us today, and, it's not every day that you get to sit down with a young kid, a 22-year-old young man who reached out to me via email and said, hey, look, man, I like what you're doing. I like what you're about. I have a lot of really great ideas. Now, albeit I'm a 22-year-old kid, but I'm going to be running for the Texas State House in 2024. And if elected, I will be the youngest elected state official in Texas history. Now, this young man has a lot of great ideas and is very passionate about the education system in Texas. And with that, we are honored to be joined by Tyler Mattingly. How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, Mr. Tally. How are you today?
It's Monday. It's definitely a Monday, but I'm hanging in there, man. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
It's a Monday. I can definitely tell you that. I'm just as tired as it is a Monday.
Outstanding, man. Well, look, man, you reached out to me, you said, hey, look, I got a lot of great ideas. And this is what I'm about. And, I looked at everything that you had sent, and first of all, that takes a great deal of courage. You're a young guy, you're putting yourself out there and you're stepping into some big boots, if you will, and you're kind of going through the trenches and the swamp of politics, and you want to throw your hat in the ring. What has inspired you to want to do something like that in the state of Texas?
Well, my main issue with politics in the state of Texas is, in my mind, it's like a magician's card trick. Now you see it, now you don't. Everyone wants to talk about how Texas has a booming industry, a great economy. It's always adding jobs. But we don't want to talk about the dark side of Texas politics, which is the education system. Our education system is decaying from the inside out, but we're so focused on other issues like crime, immigration, and job development that the education for the next generation of Texans is being dilapidated year after year, and we're not doing anything about it. And it's the part of that reason that I decided to run.
Now, you are a recent graduate of Sam Houston State University, and now you are a school teacher. And, you've had a front row seat to the Texas education system for quite some time now. And, I think that's where you could add a lot of value in the Texas State House because of your age, because you have seen it. You haven't just, talked about it or, kind of peeked into a couple of rooms, but you've actually lived it and you've taken great notes and you've kind of taken great responsibility and kind of fulfilled out a duty, of your agenda and your talking points on what you would do if elected to the Texas State House to begin that education reform in Texas. Now, what would be your first order of business, Tyler?
Well, first off, I think there's two major things that need to be stopped day one. Or I guess one would have to be stopped and one would have to be restarted. Because if you didn't know, in the state of Texas, it is no longer mandatory to go to kindergarten. The grade that helps develop reading and writing, which means first graders are entering into first grade and they don't know how to read and write. And that's the biggest issue. You have teachers ready to go on multiplication and division, but they're having to sit back and teach kids how to read and write. And another issue that I think definitely needs to be stopped is this push ahead mentality, where kids are failing or they're not showing up to school. We don't know what to do with them. Let's just push them ahead and hope that the next grade figures them out. I've seen schools in my district where we have kids in 4th and 5th grade who barely can read and write at a first grade level. And you want to talk about detrimental to future generations? That mentality is downright destructive to future generations.
I had no idea that in the state of Texas, you don't have to go to kindergarten.
I was just as shocked to hear it as you. I was lucky enough to go to pre-K, but kindergarten was mandatory. Like, they held kindergarten to the same standards as the other grades in my school. If you weren't doing well, you got held back. But now it's like, if you're failing or don't know what you're doing, well, they'll just push you ahead and see what happens.
Incredible. So are you seeing that a lot? When you were, say, in high school, did you see this firsthand of kids that weren't showing up, that weren't putting forth the effort, and pretty much knew that they could do whatever they want and they weren't going to fail and that they were going to be advanced anyways?
I was also greatly blessed to attend an early college high school, which had the mentality of either get with it or get out. So the kids who wanted to be there worked as hard as they possibly could, while the kids who didn't, they just goofed off or did whatever they wanted. But I can promise you by that next semester, they were in the other public high schools. But in my experience, from what I've learned from other high schools, is that the situation is just downright dangerous. We have in our high schools gang violence, drug violence, students attacking teachers. All of this should have been fixed or figured out in elementary school, but now it's actually putting our teachers in danger. And we're wondering why we're not able to hire enough teachers to keep up with the growing demand of students.
Well, we've got, people just flooding into the state of Texas from other states. It could be for political reasons. It could be for jobs or, whatever it may be, but they're bringing their kids with them. And so these schools continue to just be overcrowded and they're building schools. They can't keep up. And then once the school is already built, it's already undersized. They're bringing in these modular trailers. And again, they can't keep up with the demand of teachers. So you have classrooms that have 40 kids in it or 50 kids even. And, before you know it, again, you have a lot of kids that are falling through the cracks. You don't really have that one-on-one. And before you know it, you got a failing grade. And, that's where the downfall can really begin to happen in the education system. Now, I want to know from you, because again, you've seen this and you've been in those classrooms and you've had those seats. Have you actually seen a lot of kids literally fail that grade, but still get passed to the next grade?
I personally have not been with a student long enough. I just got started in the end of September. So I've not been with the full journey of a student. But I've seen so many students that they're in 3rd or 4th grade and they can't even write their names properly. They're writing letters backwards.
Hold on one second. See, you're speaking as a teacher now. I want to get your take when you were a student? Because you're only 22 years old. I mean, you've only been out of high school for a little bit. When you were going as a student in high school, did you have a front row seat to these kids pretty much doing whatever they wanted with no recourse there, or with no accountability on whether they were going to pass or fail? So they don't show up, they don't do the work, and still got promoted to the next grade. Have you seen that firsthand?
This is a part of the reason like the system is dilapidating so quickly, is I never used to see this. Like whole classes would pass and it would be fine. Of course, you had your bad classes. The kids always goofed off. Teacher couldn't keep it under control. The grade didn't want to deal with them anymore. They pushed them ahead. That just happens. Mm-hmm. But now it's like I'm looking at kindergarten through 5th, and we're having these students that just have no idea what they're doing, but we're pushing them ahead. And this isn't an issue that has been new. Even my own mother chose to stay back a grade because they were trying to push her forward into the next grade, and she knew herself that she wasn't ready. But at this point, it's not so much a choice as it seems like the district doesn't want to deal with you anymore. Let's just push you ahead.
So they're just trying to get you out, to go through the steps, go through the motions, get you graduated. We're getting all that state funding and federal funding for each head that is in the classroom, and once you're done, and then let society take care of the rest of you, and you're getting thrown out into a tough world with really no education and really no guidance on where you're going to be headed, and really at the end of the day, if you don't have good grades, you can't even join the military. So it's leaving a lot of kids out there scratching their heads saying, what do I do now?
Exactly. And this goes on to another point that I've always been arguing. When I was in an early college high school, I was blessed to go. I was one of 500 students in the entire school. My group was about 100 kids. But by the time that we reached junior and senior year, where these are the years where you're prepping to go to college, you're getting ready to move into the next steps of your lives, whether it's business, working, whatever. They gave us one 45-minute class at the end of the day, every Tuesday and Thursday, to talk about taxes and budgeting in homes. 45 minutes 2 times a week, and to determine your entire future. Now, at the time, you're a high school student. You could care less about paying taxes or budgeting. You're thinking about hanging out with your friends, playing video games, whatever. Which is my exact point, that these classes need to be expanded. Like, rather than just giving the seniors a year to goof off, sorry to all my seniors out there, but this stuff's important. Like, I wish I knew how to budget properly. So I would greatly demand an increase in the amount of classes geared at budgeting, learning life skills, and learning how to pay taxes, because I did those classes and I still really don't know how to pay taxes. I'm getting help from my family on that matter.
Recently in the news, there's a safety from the Buffalo Bills, a young man. He's probably your age, 22, 23 years old. And he's like, I want out of New York. I'm just starting to figure out, man, I don't like these taxes. They're taking half of my paycheck. I want to go play in Texas, or I want to go play in Florida, where I'm not going to be taxed as heavily as, say, a state like California and New York. So, again, that's the education system, failing a lot of people, not really knowing, what's going to be going on with your tax dollars. And then when you find out where they actually really go, that's not, that's another, punch to the gut. When you think that you're actually contributing to your community and infrastructure, making everything better in your schools and public education and public safety, you find out that the majority of the money that we're raising through taxes is going overseas, and it's not even serving our country and our people. It's serving other interests, and that's not always a good thing as well.
Exactly. I can't tell you how many times I've heard of people that just blindly put their faith that, oh, well, I'm paying taxes, they must be doing something good with it. And then you hear about these bills where it's like, oh, we're going to spend $2 million on gender studies in Pakistan. Okay, what does that do for me? What does that do for the hundreds of thousands of Americans living on the streets, for all of our homeless veterans?
Mm-hmm.
When's the gender studies in Pakistan going to pay dividends here at home? But they're using our taxpayer dollars for truthfully meaningless things and hoping we don't notice, just because they're pushing forward their agendas and their interests.
Mm-hmm. Now, why, and I want your personal opinion on this. Why do you think the state of Texas and all these ISDs are pushing these students ahead when they're not ready?
Truthfully, I think it's because as you go higher in the Texas state education system, there is less students. Students are either dropping out or they're moving or whatever have you, and you get into high school and you have a pinch compared to these elementary schools. In my district alone, they are planning within the next 2 to 3 years to add 6,000 students. The population of my hometown is 11,000. And yet we're adding 6,000 kids within the next 2 to 3 years to this relatively small school district. So of course they're pushing them ahead. You're about to have like 50, 60 kids to a class and we don't have the teachers to keep up with it. And we're just hoping whatever money the state can give us will cover it.
Now, you, again, are a recent graduate of Sam Houston State University, and now you're a school teacher, so you went through the whole entire education system as a student. You went through as a student in college, and now you are in the driver's seat as a teacher now. What is your style of teaching? Are you a teacher that can really connect with students because of your age, or are these students kind of walking all over you saying, this guy's 20 years old? I mean, I don't have to listen to him. What's your style, Tyler?
Truthfully, it honestly depends on the school and it depends on the grade. New Caney Independent School District isn't so much as it's a whole district as it's a bunch of schools all united through funding. Like my elementary school down the block is going to act completely different from the elementary school tucked away in the little community down the highway. So, and not only that, all the grades act differently to each other. Kinder, first, and second are still in that like childlike phase, where as long as you talk loud enough, they'll probably listen to you, even if they're more focused on playing around and being off task. Third and fourth is where you hit that about in between area where they want to act like adults, but they still goof off in class a whole lot. And then fifth grade, I found, is a surprisingly rare spot where it's like right before high school, they'll still listen to you. But since I'm younger and I know more of the lingo that's being used by this, frankly, elementary generation that's growing up with the internet, I found that they generally respect me more, mainly because I don't think they can get away with saying some of the stuff they usually would around an older teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So the younger grades, in my opinion, deal better with authority, direct authority, like, hey, do this. Whereas the older grades, I think they get more behind a figure that they can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to shift that mentality as I switch between classes. Now, of course, you're just going to have rowdy classes, you're going to have bad classes, and you're going to have good classes. But that mentality pretty much stays in place of, do I need to use more authority or do I need to relate to them more?
You speak the language, Tyler. You speak the language of the younger minds because you are one. And a lot of the times, older teachers, older generations aren't able to get through to their students because they're not relatable. They're just there to teach a subject, period, the end. But you could be there to teach a subject and then also be very, very relatable and speak the language of the youth. So I am a huge supporter of young men and women like yourself to stand up and say, hey, I'm going to be a teacher. And you don't just wake up one day and say, I want to be a teacher because it pays great. I mean, you have to really be passionate about the education system and what you can bring to the table. Now, you believe so strongly in this that, again, you've thrown your hat in the ring or will be doing so in 2024. to perhaps be the youngest elected state official in Texas history. Now, you need to have some pretty thick skin to be running in state politics. What will you bring to the table, and how will you be able to debate these folks that have been in the state house for quite some time? I mean, some, 10, 15, 20 years, some maybe even more than that, when they're going to look at you and perhaps laugh. That kid ain't going to take my job. What are you going to bring to the table, and what are you going to bring to this race that will set you apart from these incumbents who pretty much say, you're not going to beat me, Tyler. I don't care what you do. I'm going to out fundraise you. I'm going to outwork you. I'm going to outsmart you. I'm going to out strategize you. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to be elected in the state of Texas?
Well, I can tell you, my family's always told me ever since I was young that I'm stubborn. You may outraise me. You may outmaneuver me. Heck, you might get more TV time than me. But I can tell you, I'm going to be spending every single second of every single day that I possibly can speaking to the voters and speaking to anyone who cares about this nation. Because unlike donors or businesses, large businesses or anything like that, I'm here to support the people because I am one of them. I am a citizen who's concerned for my state, and I'm now taking it upon myself to try and step up and say, hey, we have serious issues here, and no one's talking about them, so I will. And what I bring to the table is I bring youthful passion and worldly experience, not political experience. Now, people may ask me, well, you have no experience in this. I mean, you're a substitute teacher running against a man who's been in office since 2012, a man named Cecil Bell Jr. Well, I ask you, what exactly has experience brought you? It has brought you a stagnant education system, corruption in the education system, and everyone wants to talk and shout about how we're going to fix this. Well, Cecil Bell's been in there since 2012, and I don't see nothing changing. Our school board members have been in for years, and I don't see nothing changing. So to the voter, I would have to say, do you simply tick the same old box you've been ticking for years and hoping that the same old politics is eventually going to fix the problem? Or do we say no to this kick the can down the road politics, hopefully someone will fix it mentality, and select someone who actually wants to get the job done and not sit in a seat for 2 years at a time raking in paychecks? I believe I am that option, and I believe that the kicking the can down the road stops with me.
Now, I mean, obviously, you're a grassroots guy, and to be elected to a position like that, you're going to need to be putting a lot of boots on the ground all throughout your district there. And what district is it?
The 3rd district.
The 3rd Texas House district. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of boots on the ground. Do you have you started to begin to form a team of like-minded individuals that would support you in your running for the state house?
Honestly, at my age, and I think this is an issue with a lot of younger people trying to enter politics, how can you find a team when all the bigger politicians are scooping them up? Because everyone wants to attach their names to big names like Greg Abbott or Ted Cruz, but they don't want to attach their names to people like Tyler Mattingly, who's actually trying to make a difference. So at the moment, I have the strongest possible team I can have. I have my family, I have my friends, and from that base, I'm working with like-minded individuals and businesses in my community to try and build up the funds and the team to take on Cecil Bell Jr.
Well, I don't have a dog in this fight, if you will, but I do respect you. And let me tell you why. You reached out to me and you said, hey, man, I like what you're doing. I really enjoy your podcast. You have inspired me. And please consider me to be on your podcast. And a lot of podcasters are just going to hit delete on that because some 22-year-old kid, he's wanting to run for politics and he has a couple of good ideas, whatever. I don't have time for that. I'm going to put somebody else on. But I saw something in that I really respected in you. That takes courage. That takes some bravery to step out into these political waters that aren't. It's not fun. They're dangerous, treacherous swamps, if you will. And I don't care what state you're from. You're going to have the good, the bad, the ugly. And, to be a young kid, you said, with this youthful passion is definitely something that a lot of kids in your generation are lacking. So to step up at such an early age and begin to get involved. You may not be elected at 22 or 24 or 26 or 28, but you may be elected at 30. And it takes all these years of knowledge and experience and building that network to get you to where you want to be. Now, I'm not saying you can't get the job done at 22. I'm just saying stay the course, stay motivated and stay encouraged and stay inspired, because again, folks that are your age in this generation, there's not a lot of Tyler Mattinglys out there. And again, that's why I wanted to have you on the program, because I think that you can add a lot of value to the lives of the people in the community here, and especially in Texas-3, where you can bring a new face and some new ideas. And again, I think one of the main things that you can bring is that you have been through the system like previously, to whereas somebody else may have graduated from high school 30, 40, 50 years ago, and they don't really know what's going on because they're not in the classroom every day. You, on the other hand, have been in those seats. You've been in those classrooms. You went through college, and now you're a substitute teacher and a teacher in the district that you're from, so you see it every single day. Now, you are a big guy on life skills, and this is something else that you were going to be bringing up. Now, you believe the expansion of clubs like wood shops, metalworking, auto mechanics, skills that these high schoolers can learn. So when they get out of high school, they can immediately begin to engage in the community and offer these trade skills instead of going to college, because let's face it, college has become completely watered down. And really that piece of paper, is it really worth anything anymore? I don't really know, but I could tell you a lot of tradesmen out there making great money, 6-digit incomes by the stuff that they're learning in high school through 2-year trade schools, again, that they could become an immediate asset to their community and make great money doing it. Explain and expand on your ideas of what this may look like in these area high schools in Texas.
So when I was in college, on the day that I graduated, I got as many people saying, congratulations, as I had as many people saying, oh, get ready to get a master's degree. I didn't have another $50,000 to add to a master's degree. So I got my bachelor's degree and I left. And I can tell you, from my experience, it wasn't worth it. I went to Sam Houston as a criminal justice major. And as soon as I got out of college, criminal justice chewed me up and spit me out, which is where I found my passion for education. And I went back to my home district and I became a teacher. But I can't tell you how many people I talked to after the fact, old friends from high school, people I met in college that said, man, I should just be a welder, go to trade school, become a welder or a pipe fitter or whatnot. And I think that's a big issue is you don't present these options earlier. Like I didn't have an option for like a mechanic club until the end of high school. And even then it was just like 5 kids in a class talking about cars. That's no experience. That's not something to say like, hey, you can make a lot of money working on cars or working with metal or wood. Instead, we're just shipping you down this infinite cycle of pain of taking on $100,000 in debt to get a piece of paper that doesn't do anything for you. So you can go and do the cycle again, get another $100,000 of debt and work and get another piece of paper. Mm-hmm. College has become this inflated cycle of pain But I think if you went into these high schools, in these middle schools, and you, especially with these young boys who can't sit down straight for an hour at a time for the life of them, and told them, hey, would you like a career where you can work hands-on and create things and destroy things and do whatever you want? Now, I'm not advocating, take a power drill and give it to an elementary student. But I'm saying if you can thoughtfully present this option to younger minds, it might start fleshing out these ideas. Because even with me, I was in my senior year of high school before I decided that I wanted to get into criminal justice. Mm-hmm. But if I had been presented with options like metalworking or wood shop or auto mechanics, I might just be doing that now. Am I happy with the path my life has taken me? Of course, I'm sitting here fighting for education for the state of Texas. But to many others, these kids don't know what to do, so they're just going to college to get some bland business degree or economic degree and just hoping that it takes them somewhere in life when life doesn't really care where you go because it already got its money out of college.
True. Yeah, that's very true. Once, like you said, it chewed me up and it spit me out. It got paid, and now it's up to me to go out there and carry on my life, with what I learned or what I didn't learn. Or a lot of the times you may go to college and learn that, wow, I just learned that this is a total waste of time and I could have done something completely different. But that's life, though. That's how we grow and evolve into the people. And that's where the wisdom starts to come in. And that's where experience starts to come in. So again, when you start to look at running in state politics, you could say, hey, been there, done that. I've seen that movie before. I like it or I don't like it. Now, I want to get into the wealthy districts. I want to get into the poor school districts. Texas is, very poor in a lot of areas, and it's also very wealthy. Now, are these school districts treated equally? Are they both going to be treated fairly in your mind?
On paper, each district is treated fairly. If you're a wealthy district, you get paid your taxes, and anything over the budget that the state allocates to you, the state is supposed to take that extra money and ship it to a poorer district so it can be caught up to standards. But in reality, there's nothing to stop the state of Texas from just taking that money and then throwing it with the rest of the taxpayer money and using it for whatever project. So you have these poor districts that are floundering because they're not getting funding. And even then you have wealthy districts like my district where, like I said earlier, we're adding who knows how many schools and 6,000 kids, but we can't hire enough behavior specialists to deal with kids with special needs. We're having issues finding nurses who want to do it. We're having issues with teachers because teachers don't want to get hired to be in the district if they're going to be paid dirt cheap for all this work. So in reality, they say they are treated fairly, and in a sense they are, because they're all slowly failing equally.
Mm-hmm. I've got to say I'm very impressed, with you, Tyler. I mean, being a 22-year-old kid, you're talking as if you're 32, and it sounds like you've been doing a lot of research, on a lot of these topics, and a lot of this. I can see you're very passionate about this, about perhaps being a member of the Texas State House and perhaps one day even move on to bigger and better things. Now, you believe that you can counter, your experience argument. He's too young, on the grounds of your time in the education system, and argue that the experience has brought stagnation and corruption to the educational system. Now, you had mentioned corruption in the beginning of this, but we didn't really dive into it. Can you further explain by what you mean by the corruption in the educational systems in the state of Texas?
Of course I can. To give you a good example, in my district alone, we had 2 back-to-back superintendents who were fired and then spent time in jail. One for misusing funds and the other for doing drugs. And if that isn't a sign of corruption, how these people who are blatantly committing criminal acts can get away with this for so long that they end up superintendents of whole districts is honestly astounding to me. Are we not doing background checks? Are we not looking into what these people are doing? Or are we just saying, oh, they're the superintendent, they're doing what they're supposed to, nothing more than that? And it's this corruption paired with the stagnation of, oh yeah, we're Texas, we're number one. Well, not anymore. My district used to be number one in the state of Texas, and now we're slipping gradually down the hill. And it's through this experience that I have to say, I think I would provide a better alternative. Cecil Bell Jr., I think he's done a fine job, but this isn't 2012 anymore. Heck, this isn't the 1980s when he was attending high school. We live in 2023. Our school system is failing. And all of the politicians currently elected that have any say in the matter were attending school in the 80s and 90s. They're not going to have any clue about what's happening today in our schools. Mm-hmm. And this is just one district. My district's a relatively wealthy district. I don't even want to think about what's happening to the kids and teachers in poorer districts or districts within cities that aren't allocating the funds as properly as they should. I mean, look at Houston ISD, where the state is having to step in because the district is failing so terribly. So yeah, I would say, what would you rather pick for your child's future? A politician who's been in since 2012 and always has the same copy-paste answer for everything? Or someone who has answers, knows the problems, and has solutions, and actually wants to work for your benefit and not a paycheck?
Mm-hmm. Now, Tyler, you being new in the education system, when the seat has been reversed, you went from the role to being the student to being the teacher. How are the teachers treated in the state of Texas and perhaps in the district that you represent as a teacher? How are they treated in the classroom?
Oh, I have never seen such disrespect. Even when I was a kid, we had teachers that were disrespected because they were quiet or they just weren't hands-on. But I've never seen the sheer amount of disrespect I have seen for teachers lately. A few weeks back, I was in a first grade classroom, and these kids were going absolutely crazy. I could not get them under control, no matter what I did. So I called the assistant principal, and I told him I was having all these issues. What do I do? And he essentially said, I'll send someone down there. Well, about 30 minutes later, someone comes down there. They spend about 5 minutes talking about my issues, and then they left. And that's about all the response I got from admin. So you have these teachers that are dealing with kids that are rowdy. They're out of their seat. They're not doing what they're supposed to. And sometimes hurting or fighting and arguing with other kids. And the most that they can do is take away recess. Now, I don't know about you, but taking away recess for one day isn't going to calm a kid down. They're just going to think, well, this sucks, and then move on and go back to doing the same exact thing. But this, coupled with an administration that seems to not care, what is a teacher to do? I could see why they're quitting. I wouldn't want to deal with this either. I can't discipline these kids because the society as a whole and their parents are going to get mad. So they just do whatever they want, penalty free. But I also can't go to administration because administration is more concerned with trying to get more state funding than actually helping their teachers. And it's a part of the system that is failing so desperately. Because the teachers feel like they're being mistreated, and they just get to the point where it's like even teachers on the verge of retirement are saying, I'm not getting paid enough for this, and leave.
It's as if you guys have become babysitters more than educators. And, you didn't sign up to be a babysitter. You signed up to be an educator.
Exactly. I can't tell you how many times the best advice I've gotten from other teachers who are dealing with the exact same problems I have, especially for younger grades, is, just put on a YouTube video. That'll calm them down. These are kids that are supposed to be learning to read and write, but they're being so rowdy and receiving no discipline for it that you just have to put on an episode of the Wild Kratts or some other like kid show to calm them down for the last hour or so of school so you can keep whatever is left of your sanity.
Just put a video on. Yeah, that's not the way to teach.
Funny enough, that's a mentality they have in college too. You know, teachers don't want to deal with the kids. So, here's a $200 textbook. There's your teacher for the entire semester. I can count on my fingers the number of times I had teachers that were actually passionate and like actively going out to speak with students. About 3 of them. I went to college for 2 years and I had 5 teachers a semester.
Crazy. You know, again, you know, you're very passionate about this, and you want transparency within the school districts, and you want to make a lot of changes. And one of the things right here that you are looking at is expanding school choice with vouchers and the expansion of support for charter schools. I want you to explain to me what exactly that means and how you would incorporate this into your agenda.
So I want to do everything that I possibly can to save the state education system. But in its current state, where it's not getting the funding, it's not finding the teachers, it's scraping together whatever they can and calling it a school year, I can't recommend to any parent concerned about their kid's future to go in this current environment, where you have charter schools that are better well-funded because they are private schools. If you can afford going to a charter school, I would 100% recommend it. And that's something that I would like to include with school choice vouchers, in which rather than sending your kid to another failing high school, you can send them to a charter school, which would better set them up for the future. Because you can't always trust what your schools are doing. I mean, just look at examples in Florida or Virginia or even here in the state of Texas. Now, Texas is a relatively conservative state, but you have school districts like in Dallas where they're taking kids on field trips to drag shows. Now, if I was a parent, I'd be very concerned about that. I wouldn't want to stay in Dallas ISD if they're just going to do that. So I think giving the children the option to move out of the district into a building that's actually going to care about their education would do dividends in the long run while we're still trying to figure out our education system problems.
What would that look like if you have all of these kids flowing in from one ISD into another ISD that can't already take care of the students that are inside that ISD? You would almost have a ghost town in one, and another that is a boom town with not enough teachers, classrooms, and schools to handle that. So how would you fix that? What would you do to eliminate that massive influx of students?
Truthfully, I think Texas prides itself on the idea of individualism, and you can just see that by its independent school districts. The school districts are largely independent from the state in regards to education, so they can do whatever they want. But I think there needs to be a certain crackdown almost on these issues. Like, funding is not going where it's supposed to. Kids are not being disciplined, so they're not learning what it takes to grow up. Mm-hmm. Like, I came into the school district at the tail end of this, but when I was in kindergarten and pre-K, they still had the wooden paddle boards. Like, if you messed up, you got a visit from the principal, and you got spanked. And I can tell you, after the wooden paddle board, you didn't do it again. Now, I'm not advocating for going back to spankings for all students, but I'm saying you could crack down on more than just, I'm taking away your recess. Or, you got to go and sit in the office for 2 hours before you go back to class. So I think something similar to what DeSantis has done in Florida, giving the teachers more rights to try and do their jobs without the fear of them being run out of town by angry parents who truthfully will never see the side of their kids that they do in school districts. Like, another good example, you know how parents come into lunch with their students sometimes? I have never seen so many kids turn from like these little gremlins, funny enough, into perfect little angels when their parents show up. So teachers are seeing a side of their kids that the parents are never going to see. And as a parent, you're going to defend your child to your last breath, but you have to understand, in a public school setting, they're going to do things that they don't do around you, and they need to be punished for it. So I think first, we should get discipline back into our schools. We should get morals back into our schools. I think that's one of the first things we need to do. Because if you can at least standardize it to where there's less violence in schools, less drugs, this bad behavior isn't encouraged, you wouldn't have so many people flowing from school district to school district.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people that are very upset in the state of Texas and really nationally. Especially in California, there are so many people that are pulling their kids from the public school system and they're putting them into private schools. They're putting them into Christian schools. They're putting them into, all these different types of charter schools, to learn those trades and stuff like that. I've seen a major influx in that. And if I think, if the public school system continues to go down the road that it's going down, there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to be pulled from these districts, and all that funding is going to be pulled while all these private schools begin to elevate, to where they're becoming right now. Have you ever considered, saying, you know what? I'm done with this public school stuff. I'm going to go teach over here where I'm going to be respected more and where I'm going to have a lot more opportunity for my career.
I cannot legitimately tell you how many opportunities I've been given to teach at private schools, because private schools need teachers just as bad, but they're willing to pay for them. And I have rejected the offers for the sheer fact that I want to believe that our public school systems can get better. I want to believe that 10 years down the line, I could come back to the same school that I was in yesterday and see it clean, beautiful, with hardworking students, and not filled with drugs, crime, and violence. I want to believe that that's a possibility. And that's why I want to expand our options for these private schools, because the one that has given me the most offers is this semi-online, semi-in-person school that mainly functions in New York and Michigan. Now, that's not really an option for me. I don't have the money to just go to Michigan or New York, but there's parents out there that are willing to take that chance, move halfway across the country because they can't deal with the public education system anymore.
Mm-hmm. And another reason why I wanted to have you on is because this is a hot topic throughout the whole entire country. What COVID did is it exposed a lot of the teaching styles. It, exposed, how, the education system is currently operating. And when your child was on Zoom and you overhear certain things from teachers or students, a lot of parents began to scratch their head and said, what did I just hear? So again, it's really opened the eyes and the ears of a lot of parents in this country. And I think that's why there's so many people leaving the public schools and going into the private, schooling. And plus, like you said, look, private funding, versus state funding. I mean, you're looking at probably at least a 20% raise, if not more, by crossing those railroad tracks, for, your compensation on being a teacher. Now, I've got a quick question for you here. Now, I know Texas prides itself on football. I love football too. I probably love football more than the average guy. I love football stadiums. Do you think the state of Texas overdoes the athletics and puts athletics over academics to whereas it really should be academics over athletics. When it comes to, like, you can't play if you're failing. That's why there's so many great student athletes in Texas. But let's face it, not everybody's an athlete. So the athletes are going to make sure, the coaches are going to make sure that their athletes are passing. They're going to make sure that their athletes are getting the tutors. They're going to make sure that their athletes are doing everything that they can to get those passing grades, because they need them on the field. They need to fill those stadiums up. They need to create and generate that revenue. Do you think that the appropriations, where they're spending the money after they accumulate all this wealth from building these stadiums, from the people that are going to come in and they're going to go to all these games and spend all their money, do you think that these ISDs are maybe not spending that money the way that they should be, and maybe giving teachers raises and maybe bringing in more options for the education system?
Now, I'm sorry to say this to all the football fans out there, but 100%. In my district alone, we just built a massive new stadium. And as far as I know, in its first year of use, it was only used for one thing, and that was my graduation, spaced out 6 feet apart in the middle of the COVID quarantine. So we had this massive stadium sitting there collecting dust. And I don't even know if it's being currently used by any of the teams around here. So we've just built this massive stadium that isn't being used that much. And I've just listed off before you how our schools are failing. Because it seems like Texas is more concerned with creating the next great athlete than it is with creating, the next great scientist, the next great musician, the next great president, the next great whatever. Sports are fun, athletic, and they're a great way for students to find a path in the future. I mean, if you get a sports scholarship, you're basically set up for life. But what about the people who, excuse me, what about the people who aren't athletic? What about the people like me and others who like join the chess club or the drama club or stuff like that? Why are we left out high and dry just because we can't throw a ball? So I think that, yes, Texas overdoes it on sports. Sports is fun. I love baseball. I'm an Astros fan all the way, champs 2022. But in the end, one's future in education is more important than a career that's going to take them till maybe their mid-30s if they're lucky. You need to set up everyone for a career and not just your athletes.
And I agree. I don't believe that students should be left behind because they are not athletic. And I do believe that the athletes do get that preferential treatment or whatever that word is, before a lot of other students. And that could be where, lack of the education and all that stuff, could be coming from. And then, like you said, hey, you get an athlete getting a scholarship, they're going to be set up. They're going to get their free college and perhaps even, earn their way into the big leagues or whatever it may be. But, they put in a lot of hard work, but they also have a lot of mentors. They have a lot of teachers that are working with them. They have a lot of coaches that are working with them. These are the popular kids in school. And again, you have a school of 4,000 kids, you're only looking at maybe 2 to 3% are going to be the athletes. And that's where I think a lot of the attention really is. And I'm not going to say that a lot of the other kids are being left behind, but there could be other options, and there could be a lot more money being spent to further push, lifelong skills to the people who aren't athletic. Like you said, you're in a chess club, you're in a drama club, and not every single one of these schools has these unique clubs or has all these woodshop classes and automotive and all that, depending on the wealth of the school district. Now, we only have 5 minutes left here, and this has been a great interview, and I sincerely appreciate you coming on and sharing your great ideas. But I have one more question here. We are living in the day and age of school shootings, okay? And you being a teacher now, are you guys equipped in the state of Texas in your professional? No, I won't say professional. I won't put you on the spot like that. In your personal opinion, are the teachers do the teachers have power to go to school leadership and say, you know what, I've identified a problem student, and they scare me, and this could be a potential threat to the school, and they could be potential dangerous kid that you're like, man, could this be a school shooter? Are you guys equipped with identifying these problems and preventing any tragedies before they happen?
Sadly, no, not really. The only student identification training I received was about abuse, which is good. Identifying abuse is great. But if you have a kid that you think is a school shooter, there's nothing you could really do about it, because no one, especially in the administration, wants to have to walk up to a parent and say, hey, I think your kid might be the next shooter. No one wants to say that. But it happens, and we need to have chances to identify them, or at least move them away and talk to them and see where their mentality is at. Mm-hmm. But with this age of social media and bullying, sorry to tell you, all you parents out there, but those stop bullying campaigns don't work. But we live in a time of such poor mental health that it's not a wonder that you don't see. It's a wonder you don't see more school shooters than you actively do. Mm-hmm. And like I said, no one wants to walk up to a parent and say your kid's going to be the next shooter. But you have to have that hands-on approach before you have to walk up to other parents and say, our inefficiency at this got your kid killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. We do have a mental health crisis going on in this country. And folks, I'm not advocating to take away your guns. Trust me. I am pro 2A all the way, as pro 2A as you can get. I'm simply asking, are there resources there for teachers and administrators to identify those perhaps red flags, if you will, of potential deadly incidents occurring when the writing was on the wall? How do we begin to eliminate that threat, or to perhaps intervene and stop these horrific incidents before they happen? And I think giving more power to the administrators and more power to the teachers to identify these future crises, again, can save lives. And it's not necessarily calling out the kids to their parents. It's having more mental health counselors and having those guidance counselors available, to where if there is a problem, you could say, hey, look, are you okay? Because if you're not, I'm here to help you. Would you mind speaking to one of our counselors? There may be an issue there that student is only thinking one way, and he or she has a one-track mind. But if you maybe sit down with somebody for an hour, you may be able to leave that room saying, they've really changed my attitude about this, and now I can think more clearly, and now I'm more mentally stable. Because again, like you said, there's bullying, there's social media really hurts a lot of kids. They say bad things. They post pictures. They make fun of you. And it's not going on in school. It's after school, because a lot of these kids are cowards, and they won't do it to your face, but they'll do it on social media. And I can tell you, it's not easy being a kid in today's age because of the social media. And I'm glad I grew up in the late 80s and the early 90s, because we ran the streets until the street lights came on, and we had great lives and all that other stuff. I'm not saying kids don't have great lives today. It's just different. It's like 100% different. It's like not relatable. And again, I think that's where you can come in and step into the education system and really do big things. But listen, man, we are out of time. You did really well, Tyler. Oh, I'm proud of you, man. I really am. You reached out, and I think you really did a good job today, man. And I'm glad to have you on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Mr. Talley. I think this was a great opportunity. I managed to get a lot of things off my chest about the education system that I frankly don't think parents know enough about. And hearing you say that I did great is awesome, because as far as anyone else is concerned, I'm just some 22-year-old kid shouting into the void. and nothing's going to happen. But if I get that chance, things are going to change.
Hey, look, man, we all got to start somewhere, right? And the first thing starts with beginning. You've begun it. So, folks, remember to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Until next time, for Today with Tally, this is Brian Tally. Good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.